When Adrian Volkov's lips crashed against his secretary's in the middle of a crowded restaurant, he didn't just cross a line, he painted a target on her back. For 2 years, Emma Parker had remained invisible, the perfect professional. One jealous kiss changed everything. Now the most dangerous man in New York had publicly claimed her as his, and every rival crime family in the city knew exactly how to hurt him. What started as passion would spiral into kidnapping, betrayal, and a war that would force Emma to choose between running for her life or standing beside the man who could destroy her. If you're ready to dive into a story of dangerous love and deadly power, stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The first time Emma Parker realized she was in love with Adrian Volkov, she was standing in his office at 2 in the morning, watching him destroy a man's life with nothing more than a phone call. She'd been his personal secretary for exactly 11 months, long enough to understand the rules. Short enough that the fear still felt fresh every single morning when she walked through those heavy oak doors. Adrian sat behind his massive mahogany desk, his dark eyes cold as winter steel, his voice barely above a whisper as he spoke into the phone. "You have 48 hours to return what you took. After that, I won't be calling you. I'll be visiting your family." He hung up without waiting for a response. Emma stood perfectly still by the door, tablet in hand, her face carefully neutral. She'd learned that lesson her first week. Never react, never show fear, never, ever ask questions about the things she saw and heard. "The Carlyle contracts?" Adrian's voice cut through the silence. "Signed and filed," Emma replied smoothly. "The offshore accounts have been verified. Everything's ready for tomorrow's meeting." He nodded once, dismissing her. Emma turned to leave, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. "Emma." She stopped, her heart suddenly hammering against her ribs. In 11 months, Adrian had never called her back, never used her first name. It was always Miss Parker in that detached, professional tone that reminded her exactly what she was. An employee. Nothing more. She turned slowly. "Yes, Mr. Volkov?" For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something almost human. Then it was gone, replaced by that impenetrable wall he wore like armor. "Go home. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." It was the closest thing to kindness he'd ever shown her. That was the night Emma understood she was falling for a man who would never, could never, fall for her. 2 years later, Emma had perfected the art of invisibility. She arrived at Adrian's penthouse office every morning at exactly 7:30. She knew his coffee order by heart: black, no sugar, hot enough to burn. She answered his phones, managed his schedule, kept his secrets, and asked no questions about the men in expensive suits who visited at odd hours or the conversations that stopped the moment she entered a room. She was efficient, professional, indispensable, and completely, hopelessly in love with a man who barely looked at her. "Miss Parker." Emma glanced up from her computer to find Adrian standing in the doorway of his private office, his dark suit perfectly tailored, his expression unreadable as always. "The Henderson meeting's been moved to 3, she said automatically. "I've already rearranged your afternoon schedule. The contracts for the shipping acquisition are on your desk. And your brother called. He wants to know if you're coming to dinner on Sunday." Adrian's jaw tightened slightly at the mention of his brother. "Tell Dmitri I'm busy." "I already did. He said to tell you that if you don't show up, he's coming here." For the first time that morning, Adrian's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Might have been. Of course he did. He crossed to her desk, and Emma forced herself to keep breathing normally. Even after 2 years, his presence still affected her. The way he moved, controlled, and predatory. The way his dark eyes seemed to see straight through people. The dangerous power that radiated from him like heat from a flame. "I need you to clear my schedule for lunch today," Adrian said quietly. Emma's fingers froze over her keyboard. In 2 years, Adrian had never once cleared his lunch schedule. He either worked through lunch or had business meetings at expensive restaurants where deals were made and threats were delivered over perfectly cooked steaks. "All of it?" she asked carefully. "All of it." He didn't offer an explanation. He never did. Emma pulled up his calendar and started making calls, rescheduling meetings and rearranging appointments while Adrian disappeared back into his office. She tried not to wonder where he was going, who he was meeting. She especially tried not to imagine that it might be a woman. It wasn't her business. It couldn't be her business. Adrian Volkov didn't date. He didn't do relationships. He had occasional arrangements. Women who understood what they were getting into. Women who knew better than to expect anything beyond a few expensive dinners and nights in luxury hotels. Emma had seen them come and go over the past 2 years. Beautiful women, sophisticated women. Women who looked like they belonged on Adrian's arm. Women who were nothing like her. She was just his secretary. The woman who kept his life organized and his secrets buried. Nothing more. By 11:30, Emma had successfully cleared Adrian's afternoon and was deep into reviewing contracts when her phone buzzed. A text from her college roommate, Jessica. "Lunch today?" "Same place." "I have so much to tell you." Emma smiled. Jessica had been trying to set her up on dates for the past 6 months, insisting that Emma needed to get out there and meet someone nice, someone normal, someone who worked a regular job and didn't have a private security team or offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. Perfect. See you at noon. She grabbed her purse and coat, stopping by Adrian's office to let him know she was leaving. "I'll be back by 1:30, she said from the doorway. Adrian glanced up from his laptop, his dark eyes unreadable. "Take your time." Emma nodded and headed for the elevator, trying to ignore the strange tension in his voice. The restaurant was a small Italian place 3 blocks from Adrian's building. Cozy, warm, the kind of place where normal people had normal lunches and talked about normal things. Emma slid into the booth across from Jessica, who was already halfway through a glass of wine and practically vibrating with excitement. "Okay, so I know I said I wouldn't do this again," Jessica started, barely waiting for Emma to sit down. "But I met someone absolutely perfect for you," Emma groaned. "Jess, no, listen. His name is Marcus. He's an architect. He's smart, funny, gorgeous, and, get this, completely normal. No criminal empire. No mysterious business dealings. Just a regular guy with a regular job." "I'm not interested in dating right now," Emma said automatically, the same response she'd been giving for 2 years. "You're never interested in dating," Jessica countered. "You spend all your time working for that boss of yours. What's his name again? Adrian?" "Mr. Volkov," Emma corrected, her professional mask sliding into place even here, even with her best friend. Jessica rolled her eyes. "Right. Mr. Mysterious Billionaire who definitely isn't doing anything illegal." If only she knew. "I'm serious, Em. You're 28 years old. You can't spend your entire life being some workaholic's secretary. You deserve someone who actually sees you, who appreciates you." Emma's chest tightened. She did feel invisible most days. Walking through Adrian's world like a ghost, present but never truly seen. Except for those rare moments when his dark eyes would meet hers across a room, and for just a second she could almost believe, no. She couldn't let herself think like that. "Just meet him," Jessica pressed. "One coffee. What's the worst that could happen?" Emma sighed. "Fine. One coffee." Jessica's face lit up. "Perfect. He's actually here. I invited him to join us." "You what?" But it was too late. A tall, handsome man with sandy brown hair and a warm smile was already approaching their table. "Emma, this is Marcus," Jessica said brightly. "Marcus, Emma." Marcus extended his hand, his smile genuine. "It's great to meet you. Jess has told me so much about you." Emma shook his hand, shooting Jessica a look that promised retribution later. "All good things, I hope." "Absolutely." Marcus slid into the booth next to Jessica. "She said you work in corporate management?" It was the cover story Emma used, easier than explaining that she worked for a man who controlled half the organized crime in New York. "Something like that," Emma said carefully. They fell into easy conversation. Marcus was charming, attentive, and exactly the kind of man Jessica had promised. Normal. Safe. The kind of man Emma should want. But as he talked about his latest architectural project, Emma found her mind drifting, wondering if Adrian had left for his mysterious lunch appointment, wondering who he was with, wondering why it bothered her so much. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the shift in the restaurant's atmosphere until it was too late. The conversations around them died first. Then the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Emma looked up and felt her heart stop. Adrian Volkov stood at the entrance of the restaurant, his dark eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her skin burn. He wasn't supposed to be here. This was her place, her normal lunch spot, her escape from his world. But there he stood, looking like he'd stepped out of a nightmare, or a fantasy. His black suit was perfectly tailored, his expression carved from ice, and the two men flanking him were clearly security. Everyone in the restaurant seemed to sense the danger radiating from him. Conversations faltered, people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and Adrian never took his eyes off Emma. More specifically, off Emma sitting across from another man. "Emma?" Marcus's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because Adrian was crossing the restaurant toward them, and the look in his eyes was something she'd never seen before. Something dark, possessive, dangerous. "Mr. Volkov," Emma managed, her voice barely steady as she stood up. "What are you—" He didn't let her finish. In one smooth motion, Adrian's hand cupped the back of her neck, pulling her toward him. His other hand settled on her waist, anchoring her against him. And then he kissed her. Not a polite kiss, not a professional kiss, a claiming. His lips crashed against hers with a hunger that stole the breath from her lungs. The kiss was demanding, possessive, a public declaration that Emma belonged to him. The restaurant went completely silent. Emma's mind went blank. Every thought, every question, every carefully maintained professional boundary evaporated under the heat of Adrian's mouth on hers. When he finally pulled back, his dark eyes burned into hers. "Mine," he said quietly, the single word a promise and a threat. Then he turned to Marcus, who had gone pale. "She's mine. She's always been mine." Marcus opened his mouth, then wisely closed it again, his eyes darting between Adrian and the two security guards who looked more than ready to make this situation escalate. Jessica sat frozen in the booth, her wine glass halfway to her lips, her eyes wide with shock. Adrian's hand remained on Emma's waist, his grip firm but not painful, possessive but careful. "We're leaving." It wasn't a request. Emma's legs felt like water, but she managed to grab her purse. I have to get back to work anyway." She shot Jessica an apologetic look, but her friend was still too stunned to respond. Adrian guided Emma out of the restaurant, his hand never leaving her waist. The security guards fell into step behind them, creating a protective barrier that made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. They climbed into the back of Adrian's black Mercedes, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like a prison cell locking. The moment they were alone, Emma found her voice. "What the hell was that?" Her hands were shaking, her heart racing so fast she thought it might explode. Adrian's jaw was tight, his eyes straight ahead. "Who was he?" "A friend of a friend. We were having lunch. That's what normal people do, Mr. Volkov. They have lunch with friends." "He was looking at you like you were his. He was being polite. He was touching your hand." Emma blinked. "He handed me a menu. That's not—" "You're mine." Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. "I don't share what's mine." The possessiveness in his tone sent a shiver down Emma's spine. Part fear, part something else entirely. "I'm your secretary," Emma said carefully, trying to inject some reality into this insane situation. "I work for you. That doesn't make me yours." Finally, Adrian turned to look at her, and the intensity in his dark eyes nearly stopped her heart. "You've been mine since the day you walked into my office," he said quietly. "I've just been too much of a coward to claim you." Emma's world tilted. "You... what?" 2 years, Emma. 2 years I've watched you. 2 years I've wanted you. 2 years I've told myself to stay away because you deserve better than this. Better than me." His hand moved to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. "But seeing you with him, seeing another man look at you the way I've wanted to look at you," his voice dropped to a rough whisper. "I couldn't. I won't." Emma's breath caught. Adrian... It was the first time she'd ever used his first name out loud. Something fierce and hungry flashed in his eyes. Then his mouth was on hers again, softer this time, but no less devastating. Emma melted into him, her hands sliding up to his shoulders, every professional boundary she'd carefully maintained for 2 years crumbling to dust. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I'm not a good man, Emma. You know what I am, what I do. I know. Being with me puts you in danger. I know that too. Then you understand this was a mistake. But even as he said it, his arms tightened around her. I should take you back to the office. Pretend this never happened. Let you have a normal life with a normal man. Emma's hands fisted in his jacket. What if I don't want normal? Adrian pulled back just enough to search her face. You don't know what you're saying. I've known exactly who you are for 2 years, Adrian. I've seen the meetings, the phone calls, the men in suits who come and go. I'm not naive. Then you know how dangerous this is. Not just for you, for both of us. I don't care. You should. His voice turned harsh. In my world, Emma, caring about someone is a weakness, and weakness gets people killed. The car had stopped moving, Emma realized. They were back at Adrian's building, but neither of them moved to get out. Then we'll be careful, Emma said quietly. We'll keep it private. Adrian laughed, but there was no humor in it. Too late for that. I just claimed you in front of a restaurant full of people. By tonight, every family in New York will know that Adrian Volkov has an emotional attachment. The weight of what he was saying settled over Emma like ice water. You're saying I'm a target now. I'm saying you've always been a target. I've just been pretending you weren't. His hand slid through her hair. My enemies will see you as my weakness. They'll try to use you against me. Then what do we do? Adrian's expression hardened into something cold and calculating. The crime boss who ruled New York with an iron fist. We don't hide. We don't run. We make it clear that you're not just mine. You're protected. Untouchable. How? His dark eyes met hers with absolute certainty. By making you family. Watch. Emma didn't go back to her desk that afternoon. Instead, Adrian brought her up to his private penthouse, the top floor of the building that served as both his office and his home. She'd been here before, of course, dropping off documents or retrieving files, but always during business hours, always as his secretary, never as whatever she was now. The space was exactly what she'd expected: modern, minimalist, expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the city stretching out like a kingdom beneath them. Adrian poured himself a scotch and offered Emma wine, which she accepted with trembling hands. Tell me about your family, he said quietly. Emma blinked at the sudden change in topic. My family? You never talk about them. In 2 years, you've never mentioned parents, siblings, anyone. Because there was no one to mention. My parents died when I was 19, Emma said carefully. Car accident, no siblings, no extended family. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. You're alone. I have friends. Jessica. A few others from college. But no one who would ask questions. No one who would demand to know where you are or who you're with. The clinical way he said it made Emma's stomach twist. Is that why you hired me? Because I was isolated? No. Adrian set down his glass and crossed to her, his movements controlled and predatory. I hired you because you were brilliant, organized, professional. The fact that you had no ties was fortunate. Fortunate for what? For this. His hand cupped her face. For us. For keeping you safe. Emma's heart raced. I still don't understand what you're planning. Adrian's thumb traced her lower lip. My family has rules, Emma. Sacred rules that even our enemies respect. One of them is simple. Family is off limits. You don't touch another man's wife. You don't use his children as leverage. You don't target his blood. Emma's breath caught. You want to marry me. I want to protect you. Marriage is the fastest way to do that. That's insane. We can't just... In my world, we can do whatever we want. His voice was quiet, but absolute. I can have a marriage license filed by tomorrow, a private ceremony by the end of the week. Emma's mind reeled. This is crazy. We barely know each other. You know me better than anyone else alive, Adrian said quietly. You've seen my worst, my darkness, the things I do in the shadows, and you're still here. He wasn't wrong. Emma had seen things over the past 2 years that would send most people running. She'd filed paperwork for offshore accounts, scheduled meetings with men who had blood on their hands, kept secrets that could destroy lives. and she'd never once thought about leaving. "What if I say no?" Emma whispered. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or resignation. "Then I'll assign you a security detail, keep you safe from a distance, watch you live your life with men like Marcus." His voice turned rough. "Watch you be happy with someone who deserves you. And if I say yes, then you become part of my world completely. No more hiding, no more pretending. You'll meet my family, my associates, the people who will either protect you or try to destroy you." Emma's hands were shaking. This was insane. Completely, utterly insane. But when she looked into Adrian's dark eyes, she saw something that made her chest ache. Vulnerability. The most dangerous man in New York was standing in front of her, offering her everything, and terrified she would refuse. "I need time to think," Emma said quietly. Adrian nodded slowly, stepping back. "Of course. Take all the time you need." But they both knew the clock was already ticking. By tonight, word would spread. Emma Parker, Adrian Volkov's secretary, had been publicly claimed by the boss himself. And in their world, that changed everything. Update. Emma went home that night to her small apartment in Queens, her mind spinning. She tried to be rational, logical. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. Adrian wanted to protect her, and marriage was the most efficient solution. But the way he'd kissed her hadn't felt like business. The way he'd looked at her hadn't felt like protection. It had felt like possession, like hunger, like 2 years of restraint finally breaking. Emma poured herself a glass of wine and stared out her apartment window at the city below. She could say no, walk away, go back to her normal life. Except she'd never had a normal life, had she? Even before Adrian, she'd been alone, going through the motions, existing but not really living. Working for Adrian had been the first time in years she'd felt alive, needed, part of something bigger than herself, even if that something was dangerous. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Think carefully, Miss Parker. Your choice affects more than just you." Emma's blood ran cold. Someone was already watching her. Before she could respond, another text came through. This one from Adrian's number. "You're safe. Security team is outside your building. No one will touch you." Emma crossed to the window and looked down. Sure enough, a black SUV sat parked on the street below, its windows tinted, its presence a clear warning to anyone watching. Her phone rang. "Adrian. Did someone threaten you?" His voice was deadly calm. "I got a text. Unknown number." "What did it say?" Emma repeated the message, and she heard Adrian's sharp intake of breath. "They're moving faster than I expected," he said quietly. "Pack a bag, Emma. You're not staying there tonight." "Where am I going?" "Here. With me. Where I can protect you." Emma's heart hammered. "Adrian, this isn't a request. You're in danger. Real danger. I won't let anything happen to you." The absolute certainty in his voice made Emma's decision for her. "Give me 20 minutes." She threw clothes into a bag with shaking hands, grabbed her laptop and essentials, and headed downstairs where 2 massive security guards were waiting to escort her to the SUV. The drive back to Adrian's building felt surreal, like she was stepping out of one life and into another, with no way to go back. Adrian was waiting in the penthouse when she arrived, his expression tight with barely controlled rage. "Show me the text," he demanded. Emma handed over her phone, watching as Adrian's jaw clenched. "Victor Moretti," he said quietly. "One of my rivals. He's testing me, seeing if I'll back down." "What happens if you don't?" Adrian's dark eyes met hers. War. The single word hung in the air between them. "Because of me," Emma whispered. "No." Adrian crossed to her, his hands framing her face. "Because of me. Because I was selfish enough to want you, to claim you. This is my fault, Emma, not yours." "Then let me go. Tell them I mean nothing to you. I'll leave New York, disappear. You'll be safe." Adrian's grip tightened. "I'd burn this entire city to the ground before I let you go." The fierce possession in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years, wanted. "Then what do we do?" Emma asked quietly. Adrian's expression hardened into something cold and calculating. "We show them you're not a weakness." He released her face and pulled out his phone, typing quickly. "We make you untouchable." "How?" He looked up, his dark eyes burning with intensity. Tomorrow night, there's a charity gala. Every major family in New York will be there. Politicians, businessmen, the entire criminal underworld watching each other under the guise of philanthropy. You want me to go with you? No. Adrian slipped his phone back into his pocket. I want to marry you, in front of all of them. Emma's breath caught. That's insane. That's survival. He crossed to her, his hands sliding around her waist. In my world, Emma, you make a statement or you make a grave. I choose to make a statement. By marrying me in front of your enemies. By showing them that you're not just mine, you're family, untouchable under every rule we live by. Emma's mind raced. And after, when the ceremony's over and the threat's gone, Adrian's expression softened just slightly. That's up to you. You can have the marriage annulled. Walk away. I'll make sure you're protected for the rest of your life. Or, his thumb traced her cheekbone. Or you stay. Build something real with me. See if this thing between us is worth the danger. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane, reckless, dangerous. But looking into Adrian's dark eyes, feeling his hands on her waist, remembering the way he'd kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning, she already knew her answer. Tomorrow night, Emma whispered. I'll marry you tomorrow night. Adrian's eyes flared with something fierce and hungry. Then his mouth was on hers, kissing her with a desperation that made her knees weak. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I'll keep you safe, Emma. I swear it. I know. Even if it means going to war. Emma's hands fisted in his shirt. Then we go to war. Adrian pulled back to look at her, something like wonder in his dark eyes. You're not afraid. I'm terrified, Emma admitted. But I'm more afraid of walking away, of never knowing what we could be. Adrian's hand slid into her hair. You're the bravest person I've ever met. Or the stupidest. Or both. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Welcome to my world, Emma Parker. Tomorrow, you'll be Emma Volkov. The name sent a shiver down her spine. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she would become part of Adrian's dangerous world. Tomorrow, she would either become untouchable or a target that would start a war. Emma barely slept that night. She lay in the guest room of Adrian's penthouse, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with everything that had happened in the span of a single day. This morning, she'd been his secretary. Tonight, she was sleeping under his roof. Tomorrow, she would become his wife. The word felt foreign, surreal, wife. Around 3 a.m, she gave up on sleep and padded quietly into the kitchen for water. The penthouse was dark except for the city lights filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. She nearly jumped out of her skin when she found Adrian standing by the windows, a glass of scotch in his hand, staring out at the city below. Couldn't sleep either? His voice was quiet in the darkness. Emma's heart was still racing from the surprise. Too much to think about. Adrian turned to look at her, and even in the dim light she could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful control in his posture. Second thoughts? About a dozen, Emma admitted, crossing to stand beside him. But I'm still here. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe. You can still walk away, Emma. I'll understand. Will you? His jaw tightened. No, but I'll let you go anyway, because keeping you safe matters more than keeping you close. Emma's chest ached at the quiet honesty in his voice. What time is the gala tomorrow? 7. But we have preparations before that. Adrian took a sip of his scotch. My family will want to meet you first, my brother Dmitri and my sister Natalia. They need to understand this is real. Is it? The question slipped out before Emma could stop it. Real, I mean, or is this just about protection? Adrian set down his glass and turned to face her fully, his dark eyes intense in the shadows. If this were just about protection, I would have assigned you bodyguards and kept my distance. I wouldn't have kissed you in that restaurant. I wouldn't have spent 2 years trying not to notice the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating or the way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous. Emma's breath caught. You noticed those things? I've noticed everything about you since the day you walked into my office. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. I've just been very good at pretending I hadn't. Why? Because you deserve better than this life. Better than me. Emma's hands moved to his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palms. What if I get to decide what I deserve? Adrian's eyes darkened. Then you're making a terrible decision. Maybe, or maybe I'm finally making the right one. He kissed her then, slow and deep, like he was memorizing the taste of her. Emma melted into him, her arms sliding around his neck, and for just a moment, everything else fell away. The danger. The threats. The insanity of marrying a man she'd loved from a distance for 2 years, but barely knew beyond the walls of his office. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow changes everything, he said quietly. I know. There's no going back after this, Emma. Once you're my wife, you're part of this world. All of it. The good and the very, very bad. Emma's fingers curled into his shirt. Then show me. All of it. I don't want to go into this blind. Adrian pulled back to search her face. You want to know what I really do? What this empire is built on? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment, something like pain flickering in his dark eyes. Then he stepped back, putting distance between them, and Emma immediately felt the loss of his warmth. My grandfather came to America with nothing, Adrian said quietly, his voice taking on a storytelling cadence. He built an empire from the ground up, shipping, real estate, legitimate businesses that made millions. But he also understood that in certain circles, power comes from fear, from being willing to do what others won't. He turned back to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. My father inherited that empire, expanded it, made alliances with other families, created a network that controls everything from the docks to City Hall, money laundering, protection rackets, strategic acquisitions of businesses that refuse to cooperate. Emma listened quietly, her heart steady despite the weight of his words. I inherited all of it when my father died 5 years ago, Adrian continued. The legitimate businesses and the shadow empire beneath them, and I've worked very hard to keep those two worlds separate. To build something that can exist without the violence and bloodshed that destroyed my father. He looked at her then, his expression raw and honest in a way she'd never seen. But I'm still my father's son, Emma. I still make deals in dark rooms. I still handle problems that the law can't touch. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, done things that would make you run if you knew the details. Have you killed anyone? Emma's voice was steady, but her heart hammered in her chest. Adrian's jaw tightened. Yes. The single word hung in the air between them. Emma should have been horrified, terrified, running for the door. Instead, she crossed back to him, her hands sliding up his chest. Were they trying to hurt you? Your family? Yes. Then you protected what was yours. Emma's voice was quiet, but certain. That doesn't make you a monster, Adrian. That makes you dangerous. There's a difference. Something shifted in his eyes. Wonder, maybe, or disbelief. How are you not afraid of me? Because I've seen you, Adrian. Really seen you. I've watched you donate millions to children's hospitals while pretending you don't care. I've seen you give second chances to people who failed you. I've watched you choose mercy when violence would have been easier. Her hands framed his face, forcing him to look at her. You're not your father. You're not the monster you think you are. You're a man trying to build something better while carrying the weight of an empire you never asked for. Adrian's hands covered hers, his grip almost desperate. You see the best in me when there's so little good left. Then let me keep looking. Let me find all the good you think you've lost. He kissed her again, harder this time, like she was an anchor keeping him from drowning in darkness. Emma kissed him back with everything she had, pouring 2 years of unspoken feelings into the press of her lips against his. When they finally broke apart, Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. Stay with me tonight. Not in the guest room, here, with me. It wasn't a demand, it was a plea. Emma's answer was simple. Yes. He led her to his bedroom, a space she'd never seen before, masculine and minimal, all dark colors and clean lines. They fell into bed together, tangled in each other, kissing until Emma's lips were swollen and her body ached with want. But Adrian didn't push for more. He just held her, his arms wrapped around her like she was something precious, something worth protecting. And Emma, who had spent 2 years feeling invisible, finally felt seen. The next morning came too quickly. Emma woke to find Adrian already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "What?" she asked sleepily. "Just memorizing this moment, in case it's the last peaceful one we get for a while." Emma's heart clenched. "Still worried I'll change my mind?" "Terrified," Adrian admitted quietly, "but more terrified of letting you go." Emma reached up to trace his jawline. "Then stop worrying. I'm not going anywhere." A knock at the bedroom door interrupted the moment. "Adrian," a male voice, accented and amused. "I know you're in there with your secretary. Stop hiding and introduce us." Adrian's expression shifted from tender to annoyed in an instant. "That's my brother. He has terrible timing." "An excellent hearing," the voice called through the door. "Come on, big brother. Let's meet the woman who finally cracked that ice-cold heart of yours." Adrian sighed and climbed out of bed, pulling on a shirt. "Stay here. I'll get rid of him." But Emma was already up, smoothing down her borrowed sleep clothes. "If I'm meeting your family today anyway, might as well start now." Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Instead, he crossed to her and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "You're braver than I deserve." He opened the door to reveal a man who looked like a younger, slightly less dangerous version of Adrian. Same dark hair, same sharp features, but with warm brown eyes and an easy smile that Adrian never wore. "So it's true," Dmitri said, his gaze moving between Adrian and Emma with open curiosity. "The infamous Adrian Volkov has finally fallen for someone." "Dmitri, this is Emma Parker," Adrian said stiffly. "Emma, my younger brother Dmitri, who is about to leave. Emma Volkov by tonight, from what I hear," Dmitri said, ignoring Adrian completely and extending his hand to Emma. "It's a pleasure to meet the woman who accomplished the impossible." Emma shook his hand, finding his grip warm and genuine. "The impossible?" "Making my brother feel something other than cold calculation." Dmitri's smile was teasing but kind. "He's been a ghost for 5 years. It's good to see him human again." "Dmitri," Adrian's voice held a warning. "What?" "I'm being nice. You should try it sometime." Dmitri turned back to Emma. "Our sister is on her way up. She's less diplomatic than I am, so prepare yourself." As if on cue, the elevator dinged, and a stunning woman with Adrian's dark eyes and sharp cheekbones strode into the penthouse like she owned it. Natalia Volkov was every bit as intimidating as her older brother, but in a completely different way. Where Adrian was cold control, Natalia was fire barely contained. She wore a designer suit like armor and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. She took one look at Emma and raised an eyebrow. "This is her? The secretary?" "Natalia," Adrian's voice turned dangerous, but Emma stepped forward before he could continue. She'd spent 2 years navigating Adrian's world, learning to read danger and power. She wouldn't be intimidated now. "Emma Parker?" she said calmly. "Soon to be Emma Volkov. And yes, I was Adrian's secretary. Now I'm something else entirely." Natalia's eyes narrowed, assessing. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "Good. You have a spine. You'll need it to survive this family." She crossed to Adrian and kissed his cheek. "I like her better than the others already." "There were no others," Adrian said flatly. "Exactly my point." Natalia turned back to Emma. "My brother has spent 5 years married to his work and his duty. The fact that he's willing to marry you publicly, at a gala where every enemy we have will be watching, tells me something important." "What's that?" Emma asked. "That you matter, really matter, which means you're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." Natalia's smile turned sharp. "Let's hope it's the former, because after tonight, there's no going back." Dmitri stepped between them, ever the peacemaker. What Natalia means to say is, "Welcome to the family. We're dysfunctional and dangerous, but we protect our own." "I understand the danger," Emma said quietly. "Adrian's been very clear about the risks." "Has he?" Natalia's gaze shifted to her brother. "Did you tell her about Victor Moretti? About the threats he's made? About the fact that marrying you makes her a target for every rival family in New York?" "Yes," Adrian said coldly. I've told her everything." "And she's still here?" Natalia looked genuinely surprised. Either you're a very good liar, brother, or she's actually in love with you. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Emma's heart raced, but she didn't deny it, couldn't deny it, because it was true. She was in love with Adrian Volkov, had been for 2 years, and now she was about to marry him in front of the most dangerous people in New York. I'm here because I choose to be, Emma said firmly. Whatever happens tonight, I'm making this choice with my eyes open. Natalia studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good. Then let's make sure you survive it. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling the stylist. If you're going to become a Volkov tonight, you need to look the part. Natalia, Adrian started. Don't argue with me. This is what I do. Natalia was already typing. You handle the business side. I'll handle making sure your bride doesn't get eaten alive by the vultures at that gala. Before Emma could protest, Natalia had her arm and was steering her toward the guest room. We have 6 hours to transform you from secretary to crime boss's wife. Let's get started. Emma looked back at Adrian, who mouthed, I'm sorry. But Emma found herself smiling despite the chaos. This was her new reality, a family that was equal parts protective and terrifying, a world where danger lurked around every corner, and a man who looked at her like she was worth going to war for. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of activity. Natalia's stylist arrived with an entourage, transforming Adrian's penthouse into a makeshift salon. Emma was measured, prodded, and dressed in a gown that cost more than she'd made in a year as Adrian's secretary. The dress was stunning, midnight blue silk that hugged her curves and made her feel powerful and beautiful in equal measure. The stylist swept her hair into an elegant updo, applied makeup that enhanced rather than masked, and declared her absolutely perfect. Emma barely recognized herself in the mirror. You look like you belong in our world now, Natalia said approvingly. Adrian won't be able to take his eyes off you. That's not why I'm doing this, Emma said quietly. I know. That's what makes it work. Natalia's expression softened slightly. My brother has carried the weight of this family alone for 5 years. He's never let anyone close, never trusted anyone enough to show weakness. The fact that he's chosen you tells me everything I need to know about your character. Emma met Natalia's gaze in the mirror. I won't let him down. Good. Because if you hurt him, I'll destroy you myself. Natalia's smile was pleasant, but her eyes were steel. Family first, always. I understand. Do you? Natalia stepped closer, her voice dropping. Marrying into this family means blood oaths and loyalty that goes beyond love. It means choosing us over everything else, over your old life, over any sense of normal you once had. Can you live with that? Emma thought about her small apartment in Queens, her quiet life, her coffee dates with Jessica, and her normal, safe existence. Then she thought about Adrian's arms around her last night, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious, the vulnerability in his eyes when he admitted he'd noticed her for 2 years. Yes, Emma said firmly. I can live with that. Natalia studied her for another moment, then nodded. Then let's go make you a Volkov. The gala was held at the Grandview Hotel, one of the most prestigious venues in Manhattan. Emma arrived with Adrian, flanked by Dmitri and Natalia, with a security team that made it clear they were not to be trifled with. The ballroom was already filled with New York's elite, politicians in expensive suits, businessmen with carefully neutral expressions, and families that Emma recognized from news reports and whispered conversations in Adrian's office. Everyone turned to look when they entered. Emma kept her chin high, her hand steady in Adrian's, and let his presence beside her give her strength. They're all watching, she murmured. Let them. Adrian's voice was cold and controlled, but his hand tightened around hers. By the end of tonight, they'll understand exactly what you mean to me. They made their way through the crowd, Adrian stopping occasionally to exchange terse greetings with men who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. Emma could feel the weight of their gazes, assessing her, judging her, trying to determine if she was a weakness they could exploit. Then she saw him. Victor Moretti stood across the ballroom, surrounded by his own entourage. He was older than Adrian, maybe mid-50s, with silver hair and cold gray eyes that locked onto Emma with predatory interest. That's him, Adrian said quietly. The man who sent you that text. Emma's heart raced, but she forced herself to meet Victor's gaze steadily. She wouldn't show fear, wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Victor smiled slowly, a shark smile, and raised his glass in a mocking toast. Adrian's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Dmitri appeared at his elbow. "The officiant is ready," he said quietly, "whenever you are." Adrian looked down at Emma, his dark eyes searching hers one last time. Last chance to run. Emma's answer was to squeeze his hand. Not a chance. Something fierce and possessive flashed in Adrian's eyes. Then he led her to the front of the ballroom, where a small platform had been set up. The crowd quieted as Adrian stepped forward, his presence commanding absolute attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom with natural authority. "I know you're here for the charity auction, but before we begin, I have an announcement to make." He turned to Emma, his hand still holding hers, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. 2 years ago, Emma Parker walked into my life as my secretary. Efficient, professional, invisible to everyone but me. I've spent those 2 years trying to convince myself that keeping my distance was the right thing to do, that someone as good as her deserved better than someone like me. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a gentle gesture that contrasted with the deadly serious expression on his face. But yesterday, I realized something. Life is too short and too dangerous to waste on fear. So tonight, in front of all of you, I'm claiming what's mine. He turned to the officiant, a small man who looked terrified to be the center of so much dangerous attention. Let's begin. The ceremony was short, efficient, and absolutely binding. Emma repeated the vows in a steady voice, her eyes never leaving Adrian's. When he slid the ring onto her finger, a stunning diamond that caught the light like captured fire, she felt the weight of what they were doing settle over her like a mantle. "By the power vested in me by the state of New York," the officiant said nervously, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Adrian didn't wait for permission. He pulled Emma into his arms and kissed her with a fierce possession that left no doubt in anyone's mind. She was his, completely, irrevocably. When they broke apart, the ballroom erupted in polite applause that felt more like acknowledgement of a declaration of war than celebration of a marriage. Emma turned to face the crowd as Adrian's wife and found Victor Moretti staring at them with an expression of cold calculation. The message was clear. The game had changed, and Victor was already planning his next move. Adrian kept Emma close for the rest of the gala, his hand never leaving the small of her back, his presence a constant shield against the predatory gazes that followed them through the ballroom. The ring on Emma's finger felt heavy with meaning. Mrs. Volkov. The title was no longer hypothetical. It was real, binding, and according to the dangerous men watching them from across the room, it made her either untouchable or the perfect target. "Smile," Adrian murmured against her ear. "Show them you're not afraid." Emma lifted her chin and curved her lips into something that resembled confidence, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let them see it." They moved through the crowd like royalty, accepting congratulations that felt more like condolences. Politicians shook Adrian's hand with forced smiles. Business associates offered polite words while their eyes calculated what this marriage meant for existing alliances. And the other families, the ones who operated in shadows and dealt in blood, watched with expressions that ranged from curious to hostile. Victor Moretti hadn't approached them yet, but Emma could feel his gaze like ice against her skin. "He's waiting," Dmitri said quietly, appearing beside them with 2 glasses of champagne. "Letting the tension build. It's a power play." "Let him wait." Adrian took one of the glasses and handed it to Emma. "He'll make his move eventually. They always do." Natalia joined them, her expression tight. "The Kozlov family just arrived. Alexei's with them." Something shifted in Adrian's posture, a subtle tension that Emma had learned to recognize as dangerous. Alexei shouldn't be here. He was banned from family events after the incident. Apparently Victor invited him as a guest. Natalia's voice was sharp with contempt. "He's trying to provoke you." "Who's Alexei?" Emma asked quietly. Adrian's jaw tightened. "My cousin. We had a disagreement about business practices 6 months ago. I removed him from the family operations after he decided torture was an acceptable negotiation tactic. Emma's blood ran cold. And Victor invited him here to send a message. Adrian's dark eyes scanned the ballroom until they found a younger man with the same sharp Volkov features standing beside Victor Moretti with a smile that made Emma's skin crawl. That the rules I've tried to establish don't matter, that violence is always the answer. Emma's hand tightened around her champagne glass. What do we do? Nothing. Adrian's voice was cold steel. We continue as planned. Victor wants a reaction. We don't give him one. But the universe had other plans. Alexei Volkov crossed the ballroom with Victor at his side, both men wearing expressions of calculated menace. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea, everyone sensing the coming confrontation. Cousin, Alexei said, his accent thicker than Adrian's, his smile sharp as broken glass. Congratulations on your wedding. How unexpected. Alexei. Adrian's voice held no warmth. You weren't invited. I'm Victor's guest. Surely that counts for something in your new world order. Alexei's gaze slid to Emma, and something predatory flickered in his eyes. And this must be the blushing bride, the secretary who caught the Ice King's heart. How charming. Emma felt Adrian tense beside her, his hand on her back a warning to stay calm. Emma is my wife, Adrian said quietly, each word precisely enunciated. Which means she's family. I suggest you remember that. Family. Alexei laughed, but there was no humor in it. You threw me out of this family, Adrian. You decided I was too brutal, too willing to get my hands dirty. And now you lecture me about remembering family bonds? Victor Moretti stepped forward, his silver hair gleaming under the chandelier light, his expression one of false sympathy. Now, this is a celebration, not a time for old grievances. Adrian, your cousin simply wanted to offer his congratulations. Surely you won't deny him that courtesy. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. If Adrian refused, he looked petty and vindictive. If he accepted, he gave Alexei and Victor an opportunity to get close to Emma. Adrian's response was colder than winter. My cousin can offer his congratulations from across the room. He's not welcome in our inner circle. Alexei's smile turned vicious. Your inner circle. You mean your beautiful new wife? Tell me, Adrian, does she know what you really are? What we all are? Or have you dressed up the monster in a suit and convinced her you're something noble? Careful, Dmitri said quietly, stepping closer. You're speaking to the head of this family. A family that no longer wants me. Alexei's gaze never left Emma. But perhaps your new bride should know what she's gotten herself into. Should know that the man she married has killed 17 people with his own hands, that he's destroyed families, ruined lives, built his empire on fear and blood. Emma's heart raced, but she kept her expression carefully neutral. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. I know exactly who I married, she said clearly, her voice steady, despite the fear coursing through her veins. And unlike you, I understand the difference between necessary violence and cruelty for its own sake. The ballroom had gone deadly quiet. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see how this confrontation would end. Alexei's eyes narrowed. Brave words from someone so fragile. Tell me, Emma Volkov, are you prepared for what happens when being Adrian's wife puts a target on your back? When his enemies decide the best way to hurt him is through you? That's enough. Adrian's voice was deadly calm, but Emma could feel the rage coiled beneath his controlled exterior. Leave. Now. Before I have you removed. You'd make a scene at your own wedding reception? Victor asked, his tone deliberately goading. How uncivilized. Adrian's smile was all teeth and no warmth. I'm giving him the courtesy of walking out on his own. Don't mistake civility for weakness, Victor. You of all people should know better. For a tense moment, nobody moved. The air felt heavy with unspoken threats, with violence barely restrained. Then Alexei laughed and stepped back, his hands raised in mock surrender. Of course. I wouldn't dream of causing trouble at such a joyous occasion. Congratulations again, cousin. I hope your marriage lasts longer than your last attempt at going legitimate. He turned and walked away, Victor following with a knowing smile that made Emma's skin crawl. The moment they were gone, the ballroom erupted in nervous chatter. People pretended they hadn't just witnessed a public challenge to Adrian's authority, but Emma could see the calculation in their eyes. The way they were already choosing sides for the war, everyone knew was coming. "We're leaving," Adrian said quietly. "Dmitri, Natalia, handle the rest of the evening. Make our apologies." "Adrian," Natalia started. "Now." His tone left no room for argument. Adrian guided Emma through the ballroom, his hand firm on her back, their security team closing ranks around them. They made it to the car without incident, but Emma could feel the weight of 100 gazes following them. The moment they were alone in the back of the Mercedes, Emma's carefully maintained composure cracked. "That was a threat," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "He was threatening me." "Yes." Adrian's jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists, and he did it publicly, in front of everyone, to show that marrying you hasn't made you untouchable. It's made you a target. Emma's mind raced. "You said family was off limits, that there were rules." "There are, but Victor and Alexei are testing those rules, seeing if I'll enforce them or if my attempts at going legitimate have made me soft." Adrian turned to look at her, and the fury in his dark eyes was terrifying. "They're wrong. I'm not soft. I'm strategic, and they just made a fatal mistake." "What are you going to do?" "Protect you. Eliminate the threat. Show everyone in New York that touching what's mine has consequences." His hand moved to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the violence in his voice. "I won't let them hurt you, Emma. I swear it." Emma leaned into his touch, her heart still racing. "I'm not sorry I married you, even knowing what's coming." Something softened in Adrian's expression. "You should be. I've put you in danger." "No, I walked into this with my eyes open. You gave me a choice, and I chose you." Emma's hand covered his. "So what do we do now?" Adrian's smile was cold and calculating. "Now we go to war, but not the way they expect. Victor and Alexei think I'll retaliate with violence, strike back hard and fast. But that's what they want. It gives them justification to escalate. So what's the alternative? We hit them where it really hurts, their operations, their money, their power base." Adrian's eyes glittered with dangerous intelligence. "By the end of the week, Victor Moretti will be begging for peace, and Alexei will understand exactly why I'm the head of this family." The car pulled up to Adrian's building, and they rode the elevator to the penthouse in silence. But the moment the doors closed behind them, Adrian pulled Emma into his arms, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. "I'm sorry," he said quietly against her hair. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this, for making you a target, for putting you in danger." Emma's arms tightened around him. "Stop apologizing for giving me a life that matters, for making me feel seen. For 2 years I was invisible. Now I'm the wife of the most powerful man in New York. That's not something to apologize for." Adrian pulled back to look at her, his dark eyes searching hers. "You're not afraid. I'm terrified, but I'm also exactly where I want to be." He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, and Emma kissed him back with everything she had. They stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding expensive clothes and careful pretenses, until there was nothing between them but skin and want, and 2 years of restrained desire finally unleashed. Adrian made love to her like she was precious and dangerous in equal measure, his hands worshipping every inch of her skin, his mouth following the path his fingers traced. Emma lost herself in him, in the feeling of finally being completely known and absolutely wanted. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, the city lights casting shadows across the ceiling. "What happens tomorrow?" Emma asked quietly. Adrian's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Tomorrow, we start dismantling Victor's operation. I've already set things in motion. 3 of his major shipments will be intercepted by federal agents. Anonymous tips about his money laundering operations will reach the right people. His political connections will suddenly find themselves under investigation." Emma propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "You planned this before tonight." "I've been planning this since he sent you that text message. Tonight just gave me the excuse to execute." Adrian's expression was cold and calculating. "Victor made a critical error. He threatened what's mine. Now he pays the price." "And Alexei?" "Alexei is more complicated. He's family, even if I've disowned him. Killing him would start a civil war within the Volkov organization, but there are other ways to neutralize a threat. Adrian's fingers moved to trace Emma's jawline. I'm going to give him a choice. Leave New York permanently, or face the consequences of continued defiance. Will he leave? Probably not. Alexei's always been ambitious, reckless. He sees this conflict as an opportunity to take what he thinks should be his. Adrian's voice turned hard. Which means eventually I'll have to put him down. Permanently. Emma's heart clenched at the casual way he talked about killing his own cousin. This was the reality of Adrian's world, of her world now, violence and blood and choices between survival and morality. I won't let you do it alone, she said quietly. Adrian's eyes widened. Emma! I'm not saying I'll pull the trigger, but I won't hide while you make impossible choices. I won't be the helpless wife who needs protecting from the ugly truth. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. Something fierce and possessive flashed in Adrian's eyes. You're going to get yourself killed. Then you'll just have to make sure I don't. Emma kissed him softly. I'm serious, Adrian. I didn't marry you to be kept in a gilded cage. I married you to be your partner, in everything. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, but you follow my lead. You trust my judgment. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. Deal. He pulled her close again, his arms wrapping around her like he could physically shield her from the dangers ahead. I love you, he said quietly, the words raw and honest in the darkness. I've loved you since the day you corrected my grammar on a contract and didn't even blink when I glared at you. I'm sorry it took me 2 years and a jealous rage to admit it. Emma's breath caught. It was the first time he'd said the words out loud. I love you too, she whispered. Even though you're dangerous and complicated and probably going to get me killed. Adrian laughed, a genuine sound that Emma had rarely heard. Probably, but what a way to go. They fell asleep tangled together, and for one night, the world outside ceased to exist. But morning came too quickly, bringing with it the consequences of the previous night's confrontation. Emma woke to find Adrian already dressed in a dark suit, standing by the windows with his phone pressed to his ear, his expression grim. When? He said sharply. Then, after a pause, how many casualties? Emma sat up, her heart racing. What happened? Adrian held up one finger, listening to whoever was on the other end of the line. Lock down all our operations. Double security on the warehouses. I want eyes on Victor and Alexei 24/7. He paused. And get Emma a personal security detail. 3 guards, rotating shifts. I don't want her alone for a second. He hung up and turned to Emma, his expression carefully controlled but his eyes burning with fury. Victor moved faster than I expected. Last night, 3 hours after we left the gala, one of our shipments was hijacked. $5 million in merchandise, gone. 2 of our men were killed in the process. Emma's blood ran cold. He's retaliating. He's declaring war. Adrian crossed to her, his hands framing her face. Which means things are about to get very dangerous, very fast. I need you to stay here, in the penthouse, with security. No. Emma stood, wrapping the sheet around herself. You just promised me last night that we'd be partners, that I wouldn't be kept in a cage. That was before Victor killed 2 of my men. Adrian's voice turned harsh. I won't risk you, Emma, not for pride or partnership or anything else. And I won't hide while you fight a war alone. Emma's voice was steady despite her fear. You said I needed to trust your judgment. I'm asking you to trust mine. I can help. How? You're not a soldier, Emma. You're your wife, which means I'm part of this family now, part of this organization. Emma stepped closer, her hand on his chest. I know your business inside and out. I've been managing your affairs for 2 years. I know your contacts, your operations, your financial structure. Let me help coordinate things. Be your eyes and ears while you're dealing with Victor. Adrian looked torn between pride and fear. If anything happens to you, then you'll burn the city down to avenge me. I know. Emma's lips curved into a small smile. But nothing's going to happen because you're going to protect me, and I'm going to help you win this war. For a long moment, Adrian just stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. You're going to give me a heart attack. Probably, but you'll survive. He kissed the top of her head. All right. But you work from here, and you're never without security. Those are my conditions. Deal. Adrian's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and his jaw tightened. Dmitri and Natalia are on their way up. We need to strategize. The next hour was a crash course in organized crime warfare. Dmitri arrived with detailed reports on Victor's operations, financial records that showed vulnerabilities, and intelligence about Alexei's movements. Natalia brought information about their political connections and which officials could be convinced to turn a blind eye to certain activities. Emma sat at Adrian's desk, her laptop open, cross-referencing information and identifying patterns that the others might have missed. It was eerily similar to her work as Adrian's secretary, except now the stakes were life and death, instead of profit margins. Victor's largest operation is his shipping business, Emma said, studying the financial records. He moves approximately $15 million a month through the ports. If we could disrupt that, we'd cripple his cash flow, Dmitri finished. But the ports are heavily protected. He has union bosses, dock workers, even Coast Guard officials on his payroll. So we don't go after the ports directly. Emma pulled up another file. We go after his buyers. Victor's shipping business only works if he has customers. If we convince those customers to take their business elsewhere, the operation collapses on its own. Adrian leaned over her shoulder, studying the screen. That's strategic, clean, no violence required. Exactly. Emma felt a surge of satisfaction at the approval in his voice. I've been tracking his major clients. 3 of them are also doing business with you. We could offer them better rates, better protection, better service. By the time Victor realizes what's happening, he'll have lost a third of his revenue. Natalia smiled slowly. I like the way you think, sister. The word sent a warm rush through Emma's chest. Sister. She was part of this family now. Not just Adrian's wife, but a Volkov in her own right. There's more, Emma continued, gaining confidence. Victor's been using shell companies to hide his money laundering operations. But if we leak the right information to the right people, the IRS will freeze his accounts. He'll have millions tied up in legal battles, unable to access the funds he needs to operate. That's brilliant, Dmitri said, leaning forward to look at the screen. How did you find all this? I've been Adrian's secretary for 2 years. I know how these operations work. I just never had a reason to weaponize that knowledge before. Emma looked up at Adrian. Is this helpful? His dark eyes burned with something that looked like pride and desire in equal measure. You're magnificent. Heat flooded Emma's cheeks, but she forced herself to focus. So we have a plan. Disrupt Victor's shipping business. Freeze his accounts. Cut off his revenue streams. All without firing a single shot. There's still the matter of Alexei, Natalia said quietly. He won't be satisfied with economic warfare. He wants blood. Adrian's expression hardened. Then we give him a choice. Stand down or face exile. If he refuses, we treat him like any other enemy. He's family, Adrian, Dmitri said carefully. He stopped being family when he allied with Victor against us. Adrian's voice was cold. Family protects family. Alexei chose to make Emma a target. That ends only one way. The room fell silent, everyone understanding the implications. Emma's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Her blood turned to ice as she read it. Congratulations on your wedding, Mrs. Volkov. I hope you enjoyed your first night as Adrian's wife. It may be your last. Victor Moretti had just made this personal. Emma's hands trembled as she held up the phone, the threatening message burning into her vision like acid. Adrian was beside her in an instant, his face darkening as he read Victor's words. Son of a bitch, Dmitri breathed, reading over Adrian's shoulder. Natalia's expression turned murderous. He just signed his own death warrant. But Adrian's reaction was worse than anger. It was cold, calculated fury that turned his eyes to black ice. He took the phone from Emma's shaking hands and forwarded the message to someone in his contacts before handing it back to her. That was a mistake, Adrian said quietly, his voice deadly calm. Victor just escalated this beyond economics and territory. He made it personal. Now there are no rules. Emma's heart hammered in her chest. She'd known marrying Adrian meant danger, but seeing the threat in writing, knowing that Victor Moretti was actively planning to hurt her, made it terrifyingly real. What do we do? Her voice was steadier than she felt. Adrian's hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. We end this. Quickly and permanently, he turned to Dmitri. Contact Marcus Chen. Tell him I need a meeting. Today. Dmitri's eyebrows shot up. The dragons? Adrian, bringing them into this? Victor wants a war. I'll give him one. But not the kind he's expecting. Adrian's expression was carved from stone. Marcus owes me a favor from the port expansion deal. It's time to collect. Emma had heard whispers about Marcus Chen and the Dragons, a powerful organization that controlled most of the Asian import business on the East Coast. They operated with precision and ruthlessness that made even the Italian families nervous. You're forming an alliance, Emma said, understanding dawning. I'm showing Victor that threatening my wife has consequences that extend beyond our two families. Adrian's hand moved to the small of Emma's back, protective and possessive. By tonight, every major organization in New York will know that hurting you means going to war with all of us. Natalia was already on her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. I'm reaching out to the Bratva. Sergei's been looking for an excuse to move against Victor ever since the incident at the docks last year. This gives him the justification he needs. And the Irish? Dmitri asked. I'll handle Callum personally, Adrian said. He hates Victor almost as much as I do. This won't be a hard sell. Emma watched in fascination as Adrian's family mobilized around her like a well-oiled machine. This was the true power of the Volkov organization. Not just their money or their violence, but their ability to command loyalty and forge alliances when it mattered most. What about me? Emma asked. What do you need me to do? Adrian turned to her, his dark eyes softening slightly. I need you to stay safe. That's the most important thing. That's not an answer. Emma stepped closer, her voice firm despite her fear. You said we were partners, so give me something to do. Let me help. Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. I need you to coordinate communications between the families. You're good at managing schedules and information flow. Make sure everyone knows when and where we're meeting. Keep track of what each organization is contributing. Be my central command. It was strategic work, not frontline combat, but Emma recognized it for what it was. Adrian giving her purpose while keeping her relatively safe. She could work with that. Done, she said. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls, encrypted messages, and tense negotiations. Emma set up a secure communication network, coordinating between Adrian and the various crime families he was pulling into his alliance. She created schedules, tracked commitments, and ensured that information flowed smoothly between organizations that normally operated in careful isolation from each other. It was like being Adrian's secretary again, except now she was coordinating a war instead of business meetings. By late afternoon, Adrian had secured commitments from 4 major organizations: the Dragons, the Bratva, the Irish, and a smaller but influential family that controlled the construction unions. Together, they represented more firepower and political influence than Victor Moretti could hope to match. The meeting's set for 8 tonight, Dmitri announced, ending yet another phone call. Neutral ground. The warehouse district. Everyone agreed to the terms. Adrian nodded, his expression grim. Good. Victor will hear about this within the hour. Let him sweat. Emma looked up from her laptop where she'd been organizing the meeting logistics. What happens at this meeting? We make our position clear, Adrian said, crossing to her, that you're under the protection of not just the Volkov family, but every major organization in New York. That any move against you is a move against all of us. And that Victor has exactly one chance to stand down before we dismantle his entire operation piece by piece. Will he stand down? Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. No, Adrian's voice was certain. Victor's too proud, too invested in this conflict. He'll see it as a challenge to his authority, but that's fine. I'm counting on his pride. Natalia appeared in the doorway, her expression troubled. We have a problem. Alexei just sent a message. He wants to meet with you, alone. Says he has information about Victor's plans. Adrian's jaw tightened. It's a trap. Obviously, Dmitri agreed. But what if he's telling the truth? What if he actually has intelligence we can use? Then he can share it at the meeting tonight with everyone else. Adrian's tone left no room for argument. I'm not walking into an ambush for information I can get elsewhere. But Emma's mind was racing. What if we use it? Everyone turned to look at her. Use what? Natalia asked. Alexei's meeting request. What if Adrian doesn't go, but we make it look like he's going? We could set a trap of our own. Draw Alexei out, see what he's really planning. Adrian's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. That's dangerous. Everything about this situation is dangerous, Emma countered. But Alexei's the wild card here. He's working with Victor, but he's also family. He knows things about your operations that Victor doesn't. If we can neutralize him before the meeting tonight, we remove one of Victor's biggest advantages. Dmitri was nodding slowly. She has a point. Alexei's insider knowledge makes him more dangerous than Victor's entire organization. If we can separate him from Victor, isolate him, we could force him to choose, Natalia finished, family or exile. Make him understand that there's no middle ground anymore. Adrian looked at Emma with something like awe. You're thinking like a Volkov. I am a Volkov now, Emma said quietly. For better or worse. Adrian pulled her into his arms, kissing her with fierce possession. When they broke apart, his expression had shifted from protective to strategically ruthless. All right, we use Alexei's meeting request, but I'm not going anywhere near it myself. Dmitri, you'll take a security team to the meeting location. Make it look like you're doing preliminary security checks for my arrival. If Alexei shows up alone and unarmed, we talk. If he brings Victor's people, you get out of there. And if he brings family? Dmitri asked carefully. Adrian's expression hardened. Then we find out exactly where everyone's loyalty lies. The plan was set in motion with military precision. Dmitri assembled a team of Adrian's most trusted security personnel, men who had been with the family for years, whose loyalty was beyond question. They would arrive at the meeting location 30 minutes early, ostensibly to secure the area for Adrian's arrival. Emma monitored everything from the penthouse, multiple screens showing security feeds, tracking everyone's positions, maintaining communication with all teams. It was nerve-wracking and exhilarating in equal measure. He's here, one of the security team reported through the comms. Alone, no visible weapons. Emma glanced at Adrian, who was listening to the same feed, his expression unreadable. Dmitri, you're clear to approach, Adrian said into his mic, but stay alert. Alexei's always been good at hiding knives. Through the security cameras, Emma watched as Dmitri emerged from the shadows to meet Alexei in the middle of the empty warehouse. The two men faced each other like gunslingers, tension crackling in the space between them. Where's Adrian? Alexei's voice came through clearly on the audio feed. Somewhere safe, Dmitri replied calmly. You wanted to talk. So talk. What information do you have? Alexei's laugh was bitter. You think I'd give away my leverage to the second son? I deal with Adrian or nobody. Then you deal with nobody. Dmitri's voice was cold. Because Adrian's not stupid enough to walk into your trap. This isn't a trap. But something flickered in Alexei's eyes that suggested otherwise. I'm trying to help. Victor's planning something big, something that will hurt the family. The family you betrayed when you allied with him? I didn't betray anyone. Alexei's voice turned sharp. Adrian exiled me. Cast me out for doing what needed to be done. Victor offered me a place when my own blood turned their backs. Emma's hands clenched into fists as she watched the confrontation unfold. This was the heart of it, family loyalty twisted by pride and resentment. You always were a fool, Alexei, Dmitri said quietly. Adrian didn't exile you for being brutal. He exiled you for being reckless, for letting your ego override your judgment. And now you're proving him right by siding with a man who's using you to get to Adrian. Victor's not using me. We're partners. Partners? Dmitri laughed, but there was no humor in it. Victor's using you for inside information. The moment you're no longer useful, he'll throw you away like garbage. That's who he is. That's what he does. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Alexei's face. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Tell me, Alexei, what happens after Victor destroys Adrian? What happens to you? You think Victor will make you head of the Volkov family? Give you the power and respect you think you deserve? Dmitri stepped closer. You're a tool, nothing more. And when this war is over, you'll be left with nothing. No family, no organization, no future. Alexei's hands clenched into fists. That's a lie. Then prove it. Tell me what Victor's planning. Show me that you're still loyal to this family, and maybe there's a way back. Maybe Adrian will give you one more chance. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Then Alexei shook his head slowly. It's too late for that. The choice has been made. Adrian humiliated me, threw me out like trash. I won't beg to come back. Then you've chosen exile. Dmitri's voice turned cold. After tonight's meeting, the entire city will know that the Volkov family stands united against Victor Moretti and anyone who sides with him. That includes you, cousin. Whatever protection you thought Victor could offer you, it ends tonight. We'll see about that. Alexei turned to leave, then paused. Tell Adrian he should have killed me when he had the chance. Now it's too late. He walked away into the shadows, leaving Dmitri standing alone in the warehouse. Adrian's expression was carved from granite as he listened to the exchange. When the feed went silent, he pulled off his headset and turned to Emma. Alexei made his choice. He's with Victor until the end. Emma's heart sank. She'd hoped that confronting Alexei with the truth might change his mind, might bring him back to the family. But pride and resentment ran deeper than blood. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we prepare for the meeting, and we make sure everyone understands that threats against you will not be tolerated. Adrian pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like a shield. I'm sorry you had to see that. See what family betrayal looks like. I needed to see it, Emma said against his chest. I needed to understand what we're really fighting against. The meeting location was a massive warehouse in the industrial district, far from prying eyes and civilian collateral. Adrian arrived with Emma at his side, flanked by Dmitri and Natalia, with a security team that made their presence felt without being overtly threatening. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into a neutral meeting ground. A large table dominated the center of the space, with chairs arranged around it. Security from each organization lined the walls, watching each other with careful intensity. Marcus Chen was already there, a slim man in his 50s with sharp eyes and an expression of calculated interest. Beside him sat Sergei Volkov from the Bratva, a bear of a man with a thick beard and hands that looked like they could crush skulls. Callum O'Brien represented the Irish, younger than the others but with a reputation for ruthless efficiency. And finally, Anthony Russo from the construction unions, a political player who understood power in all its forms. Victor Moretti arrived last, making an entrance with Alexei at his side like a trophy. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit expensive, his smile confident. He looked like a man who thought he'd already won. Adrian, Victor said smoothly, taking his seat, how domestic of you to bring your wife to a business meeting. Emma is family, Adrian replied coldly, his hand on the small of Emma's back. She has every right to be here. Of course, the blushing bride. Victor's gaze slid to Emma, predatory and dismissive. Tell me, Mrs. Volkov, are you enjoying married life? I do hope you got a chance to enjoy your honeymoon, brief though it may be. The threat in his words was unmistakable. Before Adrian could respond, Marcus Chen spoke up, his voice carrying quiet authority. Victor, I believe you misunderstand the purpose of this meeting. We're not here to exchange pleasantries or veiled threats. We're here to establish terms. Terms? Victor's smile didn't waver. For what? For your continued existence in this city, Sergei rumbled, his Russian accent thick. You threatened wife of Volkov. This breaks code. Ancient law that all families respect. I sent a congratulatory message, Victor said innocently. Hardly a threat. Callum O'Brien leaned forward, his Irish accent sharp. We all read the message, Moretti. Don't insult our intelligence by claiming otherwise. You made your intentions clear. Now we're making ours clear in return. Which are? Victor's expression had shifted from confident to wary. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed but his eyes deadly. Simple. You stand down. You cease all hostile actions against my organization and my family. You return what you stole in last night's raid. And you publicly acknowledge that Emma is under the protection of not just the Volkov family, but all of us. And if I refuse? Victor asked. Then we dismantle your empire piece by piece, Marcus said calmly. The Dragons will cut off your Asian import connections. The Bratva will seize your East Coast ports. The Irish will handle your political relationships. The unions will halt all your construction projects. And the Volkovs will freeze your assets and expose your financial crimes to federal authorities. Victor's confident smile finally cracked. You would unite against me over one woman? No, Natalia said quietly, speaking for the first time. We're uniting against you because you don't respect the rules that keep this city from descending into chaos. You don't get to threaten wives and families and expect business as usual. That's not how this works. The rules, Victor spat. Adrian's been trying to rewrite the rules since he took over. Going soft. Trying to legitimize everything. He's weak, and you're all fools for following him. Weak? Sergei laughed, a booming sound that echoed through the warehouse. Volkov destroyed Kozlov operation in 3 days without firing single shot. He controls more territory now than when his father ruled. You call this weak? Economic warfare, Victor sneered. Real men settle disputes with blood. Real men, Adrian said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Protect what matters. They build alliances. They think strategically instead of letting their egos dictate their actions. He leaned forward, his dark eyes locked on Victor. You call me weak for not immediately retaliating with violence when you killed my men. But the truth is, I've been destroying your operation from the inside for the past 24 hours. Your 3 largest clients have already switched to my shipping company. Your offshore accounts are frozen pending federal investigation. Your political connections are distancing themselves as we speak. By the end of the week, you'll have lost 40% of your revenue. Victor's face had gone pale. You're bluffing. Am I? Adrian's smile was cold. Ask your accountant. Oh, wait, you can't. He's currently in federal custody, cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for immunity. The warehouse went deadly silent. Victor's hands clenched into fists on the table. This is war. No, Adrian corrected. This is business. War is what happens if you continue to threaten my wife. War is what happens if you don't stand down immediately. And trust me, Victor, you don't want to see what I'm capable of when someone I love is in danger. Emma's heart swelled at the fierce protection in Adrian's voice, at the absolute certainty with which he claimed her as his. Alexei, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. You're making a mistake, cousin. Victor has resources you don't know about, connections that go deeper than you think. Then he should use them, Dmitri shot back, because he's going to need every advantage he can get. Victor stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. This isn't over. Actually, Marcus Chen said calmly, still seated, it is. You have 24 hours to comply with our terms. After that, we move forward with dismantling your operation. The choice is yours. Victor's gaze swept across the table, taking in the united front of New York's most powerful organizations. For the first time, Emma saw real fear flicker in his eyes. You'll regret this, Victor said, looking directly at Adrian. All of you. He turned and strode toward the exit, Alexei following like a shadow. The moment they were gone, the tension in the warehouse eased slightly. Well, Callum said, breaking the silence. That went better than expected. I half thought he'd try to shoot his way out. He's not that stupid, Sergei said, but he is proud. 24 hours may not be enough time for pride to become wisdom. Marcus Chen stood, extending his hand to Adrian. My people will be ready if he refuses. The dragons honor our commitments. As does the Bratva, Sergei added. And the Irish, Callum confirmed. One by one, the other organizations pledged their support, creating an alliance that would have been unthinkable a week ago, all because Adrian had been willing to do whatever it took to protect his wife. When the meeting finally ended and they were back in the car heading toward the penthouse, Emma let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. That was intense, she said. That was necessary. Adrian pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. Victor won't back down. He's too invested in this fight, but now when he makes his move, he'll be facing all of us instead of just the Volkov family. Oh, what happens in 24 hours when he doesn't comply? Emma asked. Adrian's expression hardened. Then we show him why making me choose between peace and protecting you was the worst mistake of his life. Emma shivered, but not from fear. From the absolute certainty in Adrian's voice. From the knowledge that this man would burn the entire city down to keep her safe. I love you, she said quietly. Adrian's arms tightened around her. I love you too. More than I ever thought possible. More than is probably wise. Definitely more than is wise, Emma agreed with a small smile. but I wouldn't change it. Neither would I. They spent the rest of the drive in silence, both knowing that the next 24 hours would determine the course of this conflict, would determine whether Victor would see reason or whether this city would descend into the kind of warfare that left bodies in the streets and blood on everyone's hands. Emma had never imagined that marrying Adrian would lead to this, to coordinating alliances between crime families, to being the catalyst for a potential war, to standing beside the most dangerous man in New York as his equal partner. But as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse, Adrian's hand firmly in hers, Emma realized something important. She wouldn't trade this for anything, not for safety, not for a normal life, not for the invisible existence she'd lived before Adrian kissed her in that restaurant and changed everything. This was her life now, dangerous, complicated, absolutely terrifying, and exactly where she wanted to be. The 24-hour deadline came and went with no word from Victor Moretti. Emma watched the clock tick past midnight from her position at Adrian's desk, surrounded by laptops and secure phones, coordinating information between the various families. The silence was more ominous than any threat could have been. "He's not going to comply," Dmitri said quietly, standing by the windows overlooking the city. "He'd rather go down fighting than admit defeat." Adrian's expression was carved from stone, but Emma could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "Then we move forward with the plan. Natalia, are the federal prosecutors ready?" "They've been ready since yesterday," Natalia confirmed from her position near the door. "The moment you give the word, they'll execute warrants on Victor's properties. Bank accounts frozen, assets seized, everything." "Marcus Chen's people are in position at the ports," Emma added, reading from her latest update. "The Bratva has eyes on Victor's East Coast operations. The Irish have already started making calls to his political connections. Everyone's ready." Adrian nodded slowly, but something in his expression troubled Emma. He looked like a man preparing for war, not victory. "What's wrong?" she asked quietly. "It's too quiet." Adrian crossed to the windows, his dark eyes scanning the city below. "Victor's not the type to go quietly. He should have made a move by now, retaliated somehow. The silence means he's planning something." As if summoning it with his words, Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his entire body went rigid. "What is it?" Emma asked, her heart already racing. Adrian's jaw tightened as he read the message. Then he looked up at Dmitri, his expression darker than Emma had ever seen it. "Victor just made his move. He's taken someone hostage." Emma's blood ran cold. "Who?" "Jessica." Adrian's voice was tight with controlled fury. "Your friend. He took her from her apartment an hour ago. He's demanding I meet him, alone, or he kills her." The world tilted beneath Emma's feet. Jessica. Sweet, normal Jessica, who had just wanted Emma to be happy, who had introduced her to Marcus at that fateful lunch, who had nothing to do with any of this except being Emma's friend. "No," Emma whispered, then louder. "No, this is my fault. He took her because of me." Adrian was at her side immediately, his hands framing her face. "This is not your fault. This is Victor being desperate and making the worst decision of his life." "He'll kill her if you don't go." Emma's voice was shaking. "Adrian, you can't let him hurt her because of me." "I won't." Adrian's voice was absolute certainty, but I'm also not walking into his trap alone. Dmitri was already on his phone, barking orders to the security team. Natalia had pulled up building schematics on her laptop, identifying possible locations where Victor might be holding Jessica. "He sent coordinates," Adrian said, forwarding the message to Dmitri. "An abandoned factory in Brooklyn. He wants me there in 1 hour." "It's a trap," Natalia said flatly. "He's using your wife's friend as bait to draw you out. The moment you walk in there, he'll have shooters waiting." "I know." Adrian's voice was cold calculation. "Which is why I'm not giving him what he expects." Emma's mind raced, guilt and fear warring with the strategic thinking she'd developed over the past few days. What if we use it against him? Like we did with Alexei? What if we make Victor think he's won, then turn the tables? Adrian looked at her with something like pride and fear in equal measure. "That's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous, but we can't leave Jessica there." Emma's voice was firm despite her terror. "She's innocent in all this. If something happens to her because Victor wanted to hurt me, it won't. Adrian cut her off, his hand moving to cup her face. We're going to get her back. All of us. Together. The plan came together with practiced efficiency. Adrian would appear to comply with Victor's demands, arriving at the factory with minimal security, enough to look cautious but not enough to seem threatening. Meanwhile, Marcus Chen's people would position themselves around the perimeter, cutting off escape routes. The Bratva would handle any backup Victor might have waiting, and Dmitri would lead a team through the underground tunnels that the building schematics showed connected to the factory. Emma coordinated it all from the penthouse, her fingers flying across keyboards, her voice steady as she relayed information between teams. But inside, her heart was breaking. Jessica was terrified somewhere in that building, probably not understanding why any of this was happening, why her friend's marriage had led to her kidnapping. We move in 30 minutes, Adrian said, checking his weapon with practiced ease. Emma had seen him handle guns before in the secure areas of his office, but watching him prepare for actual combat was different. This was the man who had killed 17 people with his own hands, the dangerous predator beneath the sophisticated businessman. I'm coming with you, Emma said suddenly. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Absolutely not, Adrian said immediately. She's my friend, my responsibility. I'm not sitting here while you risk your life to save her. Emma, Adrian started, I won't be in the line of fire. I'll stay in the car with security, but I need to be there. I need to see this through. Emma's voice was steady, certain. Please. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Emma's expression stopped him. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. You stay in the car. You don't move unless I or Dmitri give you the all clear. Understood? Understood. And if something goes wrong, you run. You get as far away from that building as possible. Promise me. Emma's throat tightened. Adrian? Promise me, Emma. I can't do this if I'm worried about you. She pulled back to look at him, seeing the fear beneath his controlled exterior. I promise. But you have to promise me something too. You come back to me. Whatever happens in there, you come back. Adrian's kiss was fierce and desperate, like he was memorizing the taste of her. Always. I'll always come back to you. The drive to Brooklyn felt endless. Emma sat in the back of the armored SUV with Adrian, their hands clasped together, neither speaking. What was there to say? They both knew the risks. Both understood that despite all their planning, this could still end in tragedy. The factory loomed ahead, a decaying monument to New York's industrial past. Broken windows gaped like empty eyes, graffiti covered the walls, and the whole structure looked ready to collapse. Perfect place for an ambush, Dmitri muttered from the front seat. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Victor with a photo that made Emma's stomach turn. Jessica bound to a chair, tears streaming down her face, terror in her eyes. I'm going in, Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. We're not in position yet, Dmitri protested. Give us 5 more minutes. Jessica doesn't have 5 minutes. Look at her face. Victor's already hurt her. Adrian was already opening the door. You catch up. I'm not making her wait any longer. Emma grabbed his arm. Be careful, please. Adrian kissed her one more time, hard and fast. Stay in the car. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you stay here. Then he was gone, striding toward the factory entrance with a confidence that belied the danger he was walking into. Emma watched him disappear into the building, her heart in her throat. The security team surrounding the SUV was tense, weapons ready, eyes scanning for threats. Through the comms system, she could hear Adrian's team coordinating, moving into position, preparing for whatever came next. I'm inside, Adrian's voice came through clearly. I see Jessica. She's alive. Emma's breath caught. Thank God. Where's Victor? Dmitri asked. Right here. Victor's voice, smug and satisfied, echoed through the comms. He must have been standing close to Adrian. So nice of you to accept my invitation, Adrian. And look, you even came alone like I asked. How noble. Let her go, Adrian said quietly. Your fight is with me, not her. But she's the perfect leverage, don't you think? Your wife's dear friend, the innocent caught in the crossfire. Very dramatic. Victor's voice dripped with false sympathy. Tell me, does Emma know you're here? Is she listening? Hello, Mrs. Volkov. I hope you're enjoying the show. Emma's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream, to rage at him, but she forced herself to stay silent. Stay calm. Trust Adrian's plan. What do you want, Victor? Adrian's voice was controlled, but Emma could hear the edge beneath it. What do I want? I want you to understand that you can't just reshape this city to fit your vision of legitimacy and peace. I want you to remember that real power comes from fear, not alliances. And I want you to watch as I take everything you love and destroy it piece by piece. You've already lost, Victor. Your accounts are frozen. Your operations are shut down. Your political connections have abandoned you. This vendetta is all you have left, and it's going to get you killed. Maybe, but I'll take you with me. And your wife's friend here will be the first casualty of your arrogance. Emma heard the distinctive sound of a gun being cocked. Don't, Adrian said, and for the first time Emma heard real fear in his voice. Why shouldn't I? You've taken everything from me. Why shouldn't I take something from you? Because the moment you pull that trigger, you're a dead man. My people are already in position. The exits are blocked. You're surrounded, Victor. Killing her doesn't save you. It just guarantees you die badly instead of quickly. Silence stretched through the comms, tense and terrible. Then Victor laughed, a sound devoid of humor. You're bluffing. If your people were here, they would have moved already. Are we? Dimitri's voice came through a different channel, and Emma realized with a jolt that he'd switched to a speaker so Victor could hear him. Because from where I'm standing, I count 15 of your men, all of whom are currently being held at gunpoint by mine. You're alone, Victor. It's over. Emma could hear movement through the comms, scuffling sounds, shouts of surprise, and the distinctive click of weapons being secured. You have one chance, Adrian said quietly. Put down the gun. Release Jessica. End this now before someone else has to die. You think you've won? Victor's voice had turned desperate, dangerous. You think this changes anything? There will always be someone willing to take me down. You've made enemies, Adrian, real enemies, and they'll come for you and your precious wife eventually. Then I'll deal with them the same way I'm dealing with you, by being smarter, faster, and more strategic. Adrian's voice was cold steel. Now put down the gun before I stop being civilized about this. More silence. Then the sound of a weapon clattering to the floor. Jessica, close your eyes, Adrian said gently. Emma's heart raced. What was he planning? The next sounds made her stomach turn. A struggle. A cry of pain. Then Victor's voice, panicked now. Wait, we can negotiate. You lost the right to negotiate when you threatened my wife, Adrian said coldly. When you took an innocent woman hostage. When you chose pride over survival. Adrian, please, get him out of here, Adrian said, presumably to his security team. Take him to the warehouse. Marcus Chen's people will know what to do with him. More scuffling. Victor's protests growing fainter. Then Adrian's voice, soft and reassuring. Jessica, you're safe now. I'm going to untie you. Emma's outside. She's been worried sick about you. Emma didn't wait for permission. She bolted from the SUV, security team scrambling to keep up with her, and ran toward the factory entrance. Dimitri met her halfway, a slight smile on his face. It's over, he said quietly. Victor's in custody. Jessica's shaken but unharmed. And your husband just pulled off the most impressive tactical maneuver I've seen in years. Emma pushed past him into the factory, her eyes scanning the dim interior until she found them. Adrian was carefully cutting the ropes binding Jessica to the chair, his movements gentle despite the violence that had just occurred. Jessica was crying, her face blotchy and terrified, but alive. Jess, Emma breathed, rushing forward. Jessica looked up, saw Emma, and burst into fresh sobs. The moment Adrian freed her hands, she launched herself at Emma, clinging to her like a lifeline. I'm sorry, Emma said desperately, holding her friend tight. I'm so sorry you got dragged into this. This is all my fault. Not your fault, Jessica said between sobs. That man, Victor, he was crazy. Kept talking about teaching Adrian a lesson, about showing you what happens when you marry into his world. You're safe now, Emma promised. I swear, you're safe. Adrian appeared beside them, his expression gentle but concerned. We need to get her checked out by a doctor. Make sure she's not injured. Jessica looked up at Adrian with wide, frightened eyes. You saved me. I'm sorry I put you in danger in the first place, Adrian said quietly. I'll make sure you're protected from now on. That nothing like this ever happens again. What about that man, Victor? What's going to happen to him? Adrian's expression hardened. He's going to answer for his crimes. All of them. And he'll never threaten anyone I care about again. The ride back to the city was quiet. Jessica sat between Emma and Adrian, still shaking occasionally, processing the trauma of her kidnapping. Emma held her hand the entire way, guilt eating at her insides. This was the cost of loving Adrian, of being part of his world. Innocent people getting hurt, friends being terrorized, normal lives being destroyed by the dangerous games crime families played. I'm taking a leave of absence, Jessica said suddenly. From work, from the city. I need to get away for a while. Emma's heart broke. Jess, it's not your fault, Jessica said firmly, squeezing Emma's hand. But I can't be here right now. I need space to process this, to feel safe again. I understand, Emma said quietly. Where will you go? My aunt has a place in Vermont. Quiet, peaceful. The opposite of this. Jessica looked at Emma with eyes that had seen too much too quickly. Will you be okay? With all this, with him? Emma glanced at Adrian, who was watching them both with concern in his dark eyes. Yes, Emma said with certainty. I'll be okay. Jessica studied her for a long moment, then nodded. You're different now, stronger. I barely recognize you from the woman who used to complain about filing contracts. A lot has changed in a week. Everything has changed, Jessica corrected. You're not my quiet friend Emma anymore. You're someone else. Someone I don't think I really know. The word stung, but Emma couldn't deny their truth. She had changed. Transformed from invisible secretary to crime boss's wife. From passive observer to active participant in a dangerous world. I'm still me, Emma said quietly. Just more. Jessica managed a small smile. More, Emma. I like that. They dropped Jessica at her apartment with a security team Adrian insisted she keep until she left for Vermont. Then Emma and Adrian finally headed home, exhausted and emotionally drained. The penthouse felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of the night. Emma collapsed onto the couch, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving her shaky and overwhelmed. Adrian sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. You were incredible tonight. I was terrified, Emma admitted. Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid and doing it anyway. Adrian's hand stroked her hair gently. Jessica will be okay. We'll make sure of it. And Victor? Adrian's expression turned cold. Victor will face justice. Marcus Chen's people are quite creative when it comes to dealing with men who break the rules. By tomorrow, he'll be confessing to federal prosecutors, providing evidence against his entire organization in exchange for witness protection and a chance to live. Like, he won't come back? Won't threaten us again? He'll spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder in some forgotten town in the Midwest, terrified that someone from his old life will find him. That's a worse punishment than death for a man like Victor. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing everything that had happened. What about Alexei? Adrian's jaw tightened. Alexei made his choice. He sided with Victor. That makes him an enemy of this family. So what happens to him? Exile, permanent and absolute. He leaves New York within 48 hours, or he faces the consequences. Adrian's voice was firm. I won't kill family unless I have no other choice, but I also won't let him destroy what we've built. Do you think he'll leave? I think he values his life more than his pride. But if he doesn't, Adrian trailed off, the implication clear. Emma snuggled closer to him, needing his warmth, his presence, the solid reality of him alive and safe beside her. This is our life now, isn't it? Always watching for the next threat, always prepared for the next war. Not always, Adrian said quietly. Victor was ambitious and reckless. Most families are smarter than that. They respect the rules, honor the alliances. This kind of conflict is rare. But it will happen again eventually. Maybe. Probably. Adrian tipped her chin up to look at her. I can't promise you a safe life, Emma. I can't guarantee that there won't be more threats, more danger, more nights like tonight. But I can promise you that I'll do everything in my power to protect you, that I'll never stop fighting for us, for this." Emma kissed him softly. "I know, and I'm not asking for safe. I'm just asking for us, together, whatever comes." "Together," Adrian agreed. "Always." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Victor Moretti's empire collapsed exactly as Adrian had predicted. Federal prosecutors seized everything, his organization fell apart, and Victor himself disappeared into witness protection, a broken man who had lost everything to his own pride and ambition. Alexei chose exile, leaving New York in the dead of night with nothing but a suitcase and the knowledge that returning meant death. The Volkov family closed ranks around the decision, making it clear that Alexei's betrayal had severed all ties. The alliances Adrian had forged during the crisis held strong. Marcus Chen and the Dragons maintained their friendly relationship with the Volkovs, the Bratva continued their partnership, and the Irish respected the new balance of power in the city. And slowly, carefully, Adrian began the process of transforming his organization from a criminal empire into something that could exist in the light. Legitimate businesses flourished. Illegal operations were quietly phased out or handed over to other families as part of strategic agreements. The Volkov name began to mean power not through fear, but through influence and respect. Emma was by Adrian's side through all of it, no longer his secretary but his partner in every sense of the word. She learned the business inside and out, made connections with politicians and business leaders, and proved herself to be every bit as strategic and ruthless as any Volkov who had come before. 3 months after their chaotic wedding, Emma stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the pregnancy test in her shaking hands. 2 pink lines. Her heart raced as she processed the implications. A baby. She was pregnant with Adrian's child. Terror and joy warred in her chest. Bringing a child into this world, into their dangerous life, seemed impossibly reckless. But looking at those 2 pink lines, Emma felt something else too. Hope. Hope that the future Adrian was building could actually work, that their child could grow up in a world where the Volkov name meant legitimate power, not criminal empire, that love and family could triumph over violence and fear. She found Adrian in his office, reviewing contracts for a new real estate development project. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening immediately. "Emma, I thought you were resting." "I was. I am. I have something to tell you." Adrian set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's—" Emma crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, Adrian just stared at her, his dark eyes wide with shock. Then emotion flooded his face. Joy, fear, wonder, all tangled together. We're having a baby?" "Yes." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you happy? I know we didn't plan this, and things are still complicated with the organization," and Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I'm terrified," he admitted, "and happier than I've ever been in my life." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm scared too. This world we live in, the danger, will be gone by the time our child is old enough to remember." Adrian pulled back to look at her, his expression fierce and determined. "I swear it, Emma. I'll build something better, something clean. Our child won't grow up in fear. You can't promise that." "Watch me." Adrian's hand moved to rest gently on her still flat stomach. "This changes everything. Every decision I make from now on will be about building a future worthy of our family." Over the following months, Adrian kept that promise. The transformation of the Volkov organization accelerated, legal businesses expanding while illegal operations were systematically shut down or transferred. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks and conflicts, but Adrian was relentless in his vision. Emma's pregnancy progressed smoothly, her body changing as new life grew inside her. Dmitri and Natalia were thrilled at the prospect of becoming uncle and aunt, already spoiling the baby with an absurd number of expensive gifts. Jessica eventually returned to New York, stronger and more settled after her time in Vermont. Her friendship with Emma was different now, marked by the knowledge of what Emma's life truly entailed, but still genuine. She visited occasionally, marveling at how Emma had transformed from quiet secretary to powerful matriarch of the Volkov family. 7 months into her pregnancy, Emma stood in the penthouse overlooking the city, her hands resting on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick and move inside her. Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her, his hands covering hers. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly. "How different everything is from a year ago. How I was just your secretary, invisible and lonely, going through the motions of life without really living. And now?" Emma leaned back against him, feeling safe and loved and completely alive. "Now I'm about to be a mother. I'm married to the most dangerous and complicated man in New York. I'm part of a family that would burn the city down to protect me, and I've never been happier. Even with all the danger, all the complications, especially with them." Emma turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me a life worth living, Adrian. You made me visible, made me matter. I wouldn't trade that for anything." Adrian's hand moved to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone in the gesture she'd come to love. "You always mattered. I just helped you see it." "We helped each other see it," Emma corrected. "You were so busy being the ruthless crime boss that you forgot you could be human too, could love, could want something beyond power and control." "You saved me," Adrian said quietly, "from becoming the monster everyone thought I was, from losing myself completely to the darkness. We saved each other." Adrian kissed her then, soft and sweet, a promise of all the tomorrows they would share together. 2 months later, Emma gave birth to a healthy baby girl with Adrian's dark eyes and Emma's smile. They named her Sophie after Adrian's grandmother, who had first immigrated to America with nothing but hope and determination. Holding their daughter for the first time, both Adrian and Emma felt the weight of their choices settle into something that felt like purpose. This tiny, perfect human represented everything they'd fought for: the chance to build something better, to transform legacy and power into something worthy of pride instead of fear. The Volkov Empire continued to transform under Adrian's leadership. By Sophie's first birthday, 90% of their operations were completely legitimate. The remaining 10% existed in the gray areas of politics and influence, but even those were carefully managed to minimize harm and maximize social benefit. Adrian established the Volkov Foundation, dedicating millions to education, healthcare, and support for at-risk youth, the kind of support his own family had needed generations ago. Emma ran the foundation with the same strategic brilliance she'd once applied to managing Adrian's schedule, transforming it into one of the most effective charitable organizations in New York. Years passed. Sophie grew into a bright, curious child who knew her father was powerful but had no idea about the violence and danger that had once defined the Volkov name. She grew up in a world her parents had fought to create, one where the family legacy meant philanthropy and legitimate business, where power came from influence rather than fear. Emma sometimes thought about that day in the restaurant when Adrian had kissed her in front of everyone, changing both their lives forever. How a moment of jealous impulse had sparked a chain of events that led to war, alliance, transformation, and ultimately love that had reshaped an entire criminal empire. Standing in the Foundation's office 10 years after that fateful kiss, Emma watched Adrian give a speech about their latest initiative to support foster children. He looked distinguished now, more silver in his dark hair, but his eyes still burned with the same intensity when he looked at her across the room. Their daughter sat beside Emma, 9 years old, and asking intelligent questions about how the foundation decided where to allocate resources. She was growing up to be thoughtful and strategic, inheriting the best of both her parents. After the speech, Adrian found Emma in the crowd, his hand automatically reaching for hers, a gesture so familiar now that Emma couldn't remember a time when they hadn't been connected like this. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, the same question he'd asked 1,000 times over the years. Emma smiled, squeezing his hand. "About how we started with a kiss in a restaurant and ended up here, building something that matters, creating a legacy worth passing down." "Best jealous impulse I ever had," Adrian said with a slight smile. "Best lunch meeting I ever attended," Emma agreed. Sophie tugged on Adrian's sleeve. "Dad, can we go get ice cream? You promised." Adrian's entire expression softened as he looked down at their daughter. "Of course, Princess." "Emma? Ice cream sounds perfect." They left the office together. A family forged in fire and danger, transformed by love and determination into something beautiful. The Volkov name no longer inspired fear in the streets of New York. Instead, it represented hope, second chances, and the possibility of redemption. Emma had started as the invisible secretary, falling in love with a man she could never have. But she'd ended up as the woman who transformed a criminal empire into something worthy of pride. The woman who stood beside the most powerful man in New York, not as his possession, but as his equal partner. Their story had begun with danger and jealousy and a reckless public declaration of ownership. But it had evolved into something far more powerful, a partnership built on trust, a love that had survived war and violence, and a shared vision of a better future. Walking down the street with Adrian's hand in hers and their daughter chattering excitedly about ice cream flavors, Emma realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not the absence of danger or complications, but the presence of love strong enough to face anything the world could throw at them. And as Adrian pulled her close and kissed her temple, both of them watching their daughter skip ahead on the sidewalk, Emma knew with absolute certainty that every dangerous choice, every terrifying moment, every impossible decision had been worth it. Because they'd built this together. A life, a family, a future. And that was worth everything.